What it do? Welcome to another new episode of Locked On Bucks. On today's show, big blowout in Milwaukee. The Bucks even up the season series against the Celtics with a 135-102 win. The Milwaukee Bucks got out to a super fast start during this game, and it got out of hand pretty early for the Celtics, with the Bucks taking a pretty commanding 75-38 lead at halftime. After that point, we didn't even see the Celtic starters anymore, but we still have a lot to discuss, from the Bucks dominant first half to a tighter Bucks rotation, big game from Bobby Portis, Jrue Holiday's return to Milwaukee, plus a little look ahead to the weekend slate. All that and more coming up next.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, and you can catch me weekly on the Technical Foul Podcast, as well as Cheesehead TV's Carry the G and MKE. Joining me, longtime voice of the pod and founder of BrewHoop.com, Frank Madden. We appreciate you for tuning in, and thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on YouTube. We're up to 850. I'm sorry, I'm messing up my math. 8,500 subscribers on our YouTube page. So let's keep that climbing. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you get a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com and use the code LOCKED ON to get $20 off your order. That's JASE medical.com. Now, Frank, coming into this game, we were saying it's another measuring stick game. The first one against the Celtics didn't go too well. And honestly, in this one, the measuring only lasted about a half. As mentioned, the Bucks ran off to a crazy lead at halftime, 75-38 at half. And that was the last we saw of the Celtics starters. We literally beat the broadcasting breaks off of the Celtics because TNT even switched the game in the third quarter to go to Mavericks Knicks, which was also a blowout, just not as bad as what the Bucks were doing to the Celtics. To be fair to the Celtics, though, they were on the second night of a back-to-back.
Yeah, and I thought back to, I believe the last time these teams played in Milwaukee last year, I think it was in March. The Bucks were in Indiana. They won 149-136. Blowout game. It was the night that I believe that was the night where of the famous everybody's sitting on the bench crossing their legs
Yes.
picture. And then they went home and played the Celtics it was the biggest game of the season up to that point. They were, I think, barely ahead in the East standings. So, I mean, huge implications for the number one seed, which they wanted. And they lost 140-99 against the Celtics on the second night of a back-to-back. And so, yeah, I mean, we know that rest can play a factor in games, but Camille, I don't give a whatever. I mean, like, you talk about a team that needed a
Yeah.
boost, and a team that just needed to show a spark, right? And just show the level of engagement that we saw tonight. That was this Bucks team, right? And we've been talking about the last few games. After every loss, it feels like it becomes this existential crisis over the past week or two. Giannis, scolds the team, and like everybody's saying about how they have to be better, and then they're not the next game, right?
Right.
So I think just coming out and they get out to a 10-2 lead. Dame back in the lineup, which was great to see. Gets whatever it was, 4 days off to maybe take some care of some personal business. Hopefully, he saw his kids. Maybe just step away from a minute, clear his
Mhm.
head. He hits 2 early bombs. Giannis gets a couple of early driving emphatic buckets. And Boston, they hung around, right? It's not like
Yeah.
the Bucks just went up 20-5 and that was it. I think at one point it was 21-17, and I think it was 31-23, I think. And then the
That is
Bucks
correct.
went on this massive run, and Bobby Portis had pretty slow start, actually. He missed some shots early, and it was kind of like, Bobby, like, is this still the same crap? Like, he's just been in this rut.
It was those
And
post-ups he started with,
you know,
and yeah, they
he
weren't
was
going
going at
early.
yeah, he was going at Sam Hauser. Everybody thinks they can go at Sam Hauser, but he's sneaky, kind of stout. But then Bobby and Giannis together just go on this huge run. Giannis was dishing, he was driving, and they just go on this massive run. Was it 24 straight points and
25.
25, curtains. So, yeah, I mean, look, to be up by 40 points on the best team in the league, you're probably going to make a bunch of shots and they're probably going to miss a bunch of shots. That's sort of how you get a blowout. It's a make or miss league, yada, yada. But I don't think you can take away anything from the Bucks tonight. I mean, they were obviously motivated. I think the level of engagement was higher than it's been. And again, I just thought they looked like a team that had something to prove, which they did.
Did. Absolutely, they did. And to your point about the fact that it was close for a bit, but then the lead just kind of is stretched out. And part of that was because we have a double outlier game tonight.
Mhm.
And the Milwaukee Bucks started the game off shooting ridiculous levels from three while Boston couldn't make a three. In the first half, Milwaukee finished 11 of 22 from three. The Celtics were 1 of 16 from three at the end of the first half. And for me, like, you look at that and you normally are like, well, that's not going to happen, consistently, which of course it won't. But one thing that was positive to me was seeing that the Bucks actually were able to stretch out a lead while the other team was having a poor outlier shooting game where, yes, if the Celtics are missing 15 of their 16 threes, I would hope that the Bucks are up big, and they did not disappoint. They came through, they were knocking down shots, and that comes off of a quiet Chris Middleton game scoring wise. It was a lot of Giannis, a lot of Bobby, a lot of Dame. It was honestly a pretty balanced scoring evening as well, because you had Brooke coming in and contributing, you had Bees contributing, and those guys really carried the load tonight.
Yeah, and hey, Kristaps Porzingis had the night off yesterday. Okay, he had 6 points
That
on
is
9
true.
shots, so Kristaps has no excuse. But yeah, I mean, again, just a game where they got their mojo back a little bit, and I think I don't want to say it started on the defensive end because let's be honest, it was on the offensive end, it was the defensive end, all worked. But it was funny looking at the box score because the Celtics only had 6 turnovers, which did not feel like that because it felt like in the first half in particular, well, obviously in the first half because the game was over in the first half, but the Bucks had a number of plays where it wasn't just that they forced a turnover, but it was like, pick six. Bobby had an interception off of some sort of, I can't remember exactly, it was like a screen action and they tried to dump it inside and he kind of jumped it and went the other way for a bucket. Giannis kind of did the same thing and flipped it over to Malik who finished, and so it was kind of funny. I think Chris did that once as well. So it was interesting because they didn't actually get a lot of turnovers, but the transition game was really good today. They definitely had the better of the transition game. You're looking at, again, our kind of cleaning the glass stats. I think it was like plus 5.9 points per 100 added versus Boston plus 2.1. So the Celtics did a little bit. But, we've obviously talked all year long about transition game being an area where the Bucks have been, in deficit, right? Like the other teams have been having success against them and they have not been very good themselves. And so tonight they flipped that. And then, of course, the half court obviously was a huge area of advantage. And, I think the thing is, the test I always like to do, I think we've talked about this. If you're having one of these clear, outlier type shooting performance games, take the differential in 3-pointers made, multiply it by 3 and compare it to the actual deficit of the game, right? Like if you're up 15 points and you've got a 27-point advantage from 3, then yeah, that's like very much a 3-point luck game. And who knows, right? If it's only 15, like that can flip in a quarter, right? And we saw that to a degree in the Utah game because Utah was flame throwing threes in that first half. In the second half, they cooled down. The Bucks started hitting threes, and they got it from 33 to 7, 8 points, at various points. In this game, it was a plus 30 advantage at halftime, but it was, almost a 40-point lead too. And so kind of similar to what Utah did. It wasn't just that the Bucks were making threes, but they also were getting second chance points.
Yep.
And again, they were just a better team, right? And again, like, you don't need to apologize for making shots in the game of basketball. Like that's the whole point of the sport. So we can say, we can question whether this is like representative of what's going to happen if you roll the ball out again in 2 days with what team's a little bit more rested. Fair enough, right? I don't expect the Bucks are going to do this, the next time these teams play. But the whole point is to make more shots than the other guys.
Yep.
And I think, again, the Bucks defense was better. They were more engaged. And so, I mean, tip your cap to the Bucks. Like they have not had a statement game like this against the Celtics in quite a while. The last time I think the Bucks had a big rest advantage. The Celtics played their scrubs from the start, and
It was
Bucks needed
close.
overtime to beat them last year.
Yep.
So again, like, you just can't take anything for granted. And the Bucks didn't. They didn't take anything for granted. They took care of business. And now the question is, all right, can you build on this, right? It's one game. I think it's important. Hopefully the vibes are better. But what do you do the next time out? Golden State, Sacramento coming up. If you lose those two games, like, how good do you really feel about this game in retrospect? But if you can use this and kind of build on it, and dare I say, play a little bit better defense moving forward, I don't know.
Still room.
Then maybe you've kind of actually bottled something here.
Yeah, there's still room to grow, of course, for the Bucks. And I saw throughout this game as well where the Bucks still were having some defensive lapses and miscommunications, and guys were open. They just weren't knocking down their shots. But one thing to call out is just the fact that, again, I mentioned they had a very slow start the last time out against the Jazz. The last time they saw the Celtics, they had a slow start. Tonight, it was a 41-23 first quarter. The last time we saw the Celtics, it was a 29-17 first quarter with the Celtics taking that lead. So I'm happy how it came about. Like I mentioned, they got the broadcasting break speed off of them. There was no local feed for the game, so we were all on Twitter begging TNT to turn
it was like the Miami game. I wasn't on Twitter.
Yep.
Like the Heat game, right, where they set the record for threes. Just how often does this happen? I feel like, does this only happen to the Bucks? Like every couple of years, the Bucks have such a big blowout win that they get literally taken off TV. I mean, just what's going on here? It's not fair.
That's what it feels like. It feels like some type of bias or something. Off of joking, but
that Knicks game was a blowout too, wasn't it? They changed it over and they're down 21 points.
It wasn't as big of a blowout as what we were doing here in Milwaukee. But hey, listen, to that end, by the end of the third quarter, the Bucks were up 111-70. Our friend Justin Garcia, the co-host of Locked On Bucks, he tweeted out that the Bucks' 41-point lead going into the fourth quarter is their largest lead through the fourth quarter since they took a 49-point lead into the fourth against the Magic back in November of 2021. A big game for him. And again, I mentioned the Bucks did deploy a little bit of a tighter rotation during the first half of the game when it was starters versus starters. And I want to take a look about what was different in this game compared to the last. Up next. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but just for a moment, let's talk about preparing for real life. Because according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics, like right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade, which can be scary when you think about that. But thankfully, we can be all right because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that's used to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, amongst other things. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician. Your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at the fraction of the regular cost. So, hey, it's never been more important than today to be prepared. So go to jasemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off of your offer. Again, visit jasemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off of your order. Time is valuable. We appreciate you for spending some of that time with us here on Locked On Bucks. A special shout out to all of the everydayers who tune in Monday through Friday for each and every episode. And if you enjoy what we do here at Locked On Bucks, I got to tell you about Locked On Sports today because they launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. That's right, 24/7 sports coverage brought to you by the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows that cover every league. So make sure you head over to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, Frank, I mentioned that the Bucks rotation in the first half was a little bit tighter than what we saw the last time out against Boston. And Boston is always an interesting conversation, right? We've had the conversations about, is Bobby Portis playable against Boston? And tonight, Bobby Portis scored more points alone. He had 28 than the entire Bucks bench scored in the first Boston matchup, where they had 22 as a full bench. Tonight, the Bucks really only went 8 deep in the first half. You had the starters, you had Pat Connaughton, you had Bobby Portis, and you had Andre Jackson Jr. There was no Marjan, no campaign in the rotation like we saw the last time out. And I got to say, Bobby having this game against Boston with the noise that's been around him, the trade chatters picking up, everyone understands that that's a contract that is tradable. There have been the conversations, as mentioned before, about how playable is Bobby against the Celtics. And although they didn't have Al Horford, he did come out and have a really, really good game shooting lights out from three, which you mentioned the post-ups earlier, which I'm not as big of a fan of the post-ups, but seeing Bobby getting open looks from the corner, open looks from three, I'm going to take that every time.
Yeah, and Giannis was like throwing like weird over the head,
Crazy
like,
dimes.
he was kind of feeling himself a bit. And I think I can't even describe exactly what he did on one of those, Bobby. Like he
It's like
jumped up and kind of like, I don't know,
tossed it behind his
just
head.
go, yeah,
Yeah.
like
But it was a
but
bounce pass behind his head. I've never seen
it
something
was
like
I
that
don't know.
before.
I think I started a while ago a Giannis cool pass thread where I was just like
Yes.
putting in cool passes. I'm gonna have to dig that one up and throw it on there because that was a cool pass. Um, yeah, I mean this is what they need from Bobby, right? Like I mean, to me it's funny because he obviously it's not like he's a guy who chucks from three all game long, right? I mean, he doesn't. He does other stuff. He takes shots. He likes to post up, get offensive rebounds, etc. So it's not like he's the most 3-point dependent guy in the world, but it does feel like that's the bellwether for him swinging from a guy who is like us sitting back and saying like, is this guy going to play in the playoffs? Like, can we
Right.
count on him to be a value add, especially given what we've seen? That when he's not making threes to being this just when it is going down, it's stretching the floor, it's pulling out the opponent defenders because obviously a lot of times he's being guarded by centers. Tonight he was guarded by some of the small guys too because they were switching a lot. And he's a guy that can punish switches, and I think that's been one of the things I think that hurt in the 2 years ago in the playoffs, especially against the Celtics, was I think he had a lot of matchups against like Jaylen Brown or like guys that he really should have had a physical advantage and get to that little push shot, which normally he's so good at, right? Like he's one of the few guys. I shouldn't say few guys, but it's like when you think about guys on the Bucks that can punish mismatches. Giannis is kind of weird. It's almost like he's better on certain spots of the floor against big guys rather than small guys. And Brook, like weirdly, doesn't really put small dudes under the rim. Like he'll just settle for like weird step backs that he can still make, but whatever. But Bobby's like, it feels like almost like he's the most reliable, like post up a small guy type guy, maybe him and Chris. Um, and so, yeah, that's what they need him to do, right? They need him to be able to punish the other teams offensively and then just kind of survive defensively. So, um, you know, uh, he needed this game. I think Dame needed to see the ball go through. I mean, Dame didn't have like a
Yeah.
huge raw scoring game, 21 points, but I thought hitting those early threes and then the other piece too, I thought he had a couple of nice finishes going at Porzingis as well. So 21 points on 12 shots, 50% from the field, no turnovers, plus 25, 4 assists. Yeah, we'll take that. 27 minutes like that. That obviously was great to see. And you compare that to Derek White and Jrue. Jrue goes 2 for 9, 6 points. Another kind of womp game from Jrue, similar to the first game, right? Even as well as
Mhm.
the Celtics play in the first game, Jrue just did not look like the same dude offensively. And Derek White, who's been awesome this year, 18 minutes, 2 points, 1 rebound, no assists, no steals, no blocks, minus 14. I mean, that's probably the worst game Derek White's had all year, and he's been incredible. So, yeah, I thought it was, important for Bobby, and I don't know, just a get right game for the Bucks
Yeah.
overall, obviously, right? Like a lot of guys needed a get right game, and a lot of guys got it.
Absolutely, they did. And you did mention Jrue Holiday in this game, and it wasn't a great game from Jrue Holiday here tonight, but the Bucks did honor him throughout the game, and Bucks fans gave him a standing ovation, which is something that Justin and I talked about, wondering what the response to Jrue Holiday would be here in Milwaukee once he did return. I was saying I would hope that Bucks fans stand up and give
Yeah,
that man some love because
yeah,
of
he was
what he
always
did. Like, I know he plays for the Celtics, but I was like, I think that Bucks fans will be able to just respect what he
for
did
sure.
during his time here, and they absolutely did. He also made there was an article in the Journal Sentinel, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, about him still being a big contributor to the health of the Milwaukee community with some off-court giving. He is still investing his dollars here into our community. So when you pair that with what he did on court, I mean, the steal to the oop in the finals will be a forever played clip here. So it was nice to see him get some love.
Yeah, and I mean, no question. I think that he was going to get that respect, and you know, doesn't mean that people are rooting for his shots to go in,
Right.
um, but you know, and I don't know. I mean, his comments after the game yesterday, um, you know, coming in here, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's still a weird feeling, right? Because he
Mhm.
gave 3 years of his career, the most successful 3 years in terms of playoffs, and you know, just having the team success that he never had before, um, and becoming an all-star again. You know, and I'm sure it still feels odd, right, to kind of have that, I don't want to say taken from him, because you know he's still getting paid a huge amount of money to play basketball, and he's on the best, you know, has on the team with the best record in the league. So you know, it's a pretty good life, you know, still. But I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, it's a luxury that the Celtics don't need him to be a go-to scorer, but it also just feels like, and this, I mean, his overall numbers are not like bad. His efficiency is not bad, right? But you know, he's averaging what 13 and 5, something like that. So I don't know. We'll see. It is sort of interesting though. I mean, defensively, like he's always going to be. I mean, obviously, everybody would want to have him, no matter if he's averaging, you know,
Right.
6 points or 20, right? Like Drew's always going to be a net positive value guy, I think, um, even if he's not getting the ball a ton. But I do kind of wonder, you know, for him, I'm sure obviously winning is great, uh, but you know, how thrilled is he that he's like a fourth option and he's in a contract year? He's going to be eligible for extension later this spring. Definitely going to be kind of an interesting thing to watch. But hey, at least he's the one guy. You know, if the Celtics finally win a championship, at least I can take some solace that Jrue Holiday gets to have the last laugh. If it's at the Bucks' expense, that sucks. But you know, Drew's a Bucks legend. It'll be interesting to see. Do you think there's any chance that his number would get retired? I would guess
Ooh.
probably not, because 3 seasons is just so short. Like that's pretty much like, I think there's some examples of that, guys playing 3 seasons and then you know having a number retired. Oscar played I think 4 in Milwaukee. Um, but man, I mean that would be pretty rare. But if anybody would get their number retired for 3 years, I mean, I'm not going to argue with Drew Holiday.
Yeah, I think that would be a close one because, like you mentioned, it's a small burst, but like you were able to get a championship, one of the first in 50 years, and you were a key contributor to that. You had an All-Star appearance here while representing the Bucks, which, as we know, before Giannis, there hadn't been too many All-Stars outside of Michael Redd when he had his appearance. So it's an interesting case to think about. I know for a while there, which still makes me shake my head. But there was a debate about if Chris Middleton would get his number retired. And it's like, we know 34 and 22 are going up there. But the question is 21 going up there? I'm actually going to ask those watching on YouTube. Let us know in the comments if you think that Jrue Holiday's number should be retired in Milwaukee for what he did during his 3 years here, because it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, Brooke, well, there will be a little bit different conversation about Brooke. Obviously, Brooke
Mhm.
now year 6, so he's had a longer duration here. Obviously, you know, not even last year. I mean, last year he was incredible, defensive player of the year, you know, whatever. I still would say, you know, didn't get to the point of a Drew Holiday at his best. But if he's here, you know, a year after that as well, I mean, if he's here 7 years with a title, freaking everybody loves him. It wouldn't shock me if Brooke Lopez was also, you know, ultimately a champion,
Yeah.
a guy who got his jersey retired, and that would be pretty cool. I mean, if all 4 of those guys at some point get their jerseys retired, I don't know. You're not gonna hear me complaining, like, you know, in
Yeah.
10 years, like, oh, why are they retiring Brooke Lopez's number? You know, I'll be old and washed, and the Bucks will be, you know, a garbage team with no picks. Like, you know, like I'll be happy to see Brooke Lopez back in the building if he gets his number retired. Bring Drew back. Why hasn't Drew gotten his number retired? Well, I'll be kind of asking that question probably. So,
Yeah.
you know, but it is an interesting thing to think back. You know, maybe just win one more title, and then nobody can ask the question.
Yeah, then Brooke will be solidified for sure, for sure. There's no
Yeah.
questions asked on that one. But the
By the
Bucks
way,
have
the
go ahead.
other weird thing, just as you were saying that, and you were saying 34 and 22, it is pretty crazy, right? That the
Those
two
numbers?
the two obvious numbers that are going to get retired for Giannis and Chris are also numbers that, you know, Michael Redd and Ray Allen have legitimate claims on having retired. So that's like one of those things that I'm just fascinated, sort of like, what do they do with that? Like, does the fact that Chris and Giannis have those numbers, does that mean that they're less likely to get retired,
Like, that's
co-retired?
what I always wondered, if they would co-retire it, just have,
Yeah,
like, 2 names, but honestly, once Giannis won that championship, I was like, 34 that's his
it's
number,
it.
and
It's his. It's
it's
his.
no disrespect to Ray Allen, like, Ray Allen's time here is fundamental to my Bucks fandom, but Giannis, the longevity, the team record, same with 22, the Chris Middleton 22, where it's like the longevity plus the title, plus how many records they hold in the Bucks franchise record book, like, it's hard to argue that when you see those numbers, you think of anyone else first before you think of Giannis or you think of Chris. So
My prediction, I think Michael Redd will have his number co-retired, whatever. I mean, they're not going to do it on like the same night, obviously, but
right.
like I think Chris at some point will have his number retired. This is my prediction. And then I think that they'll retire where they'll put, Red underneath Middleton, or actually they should
With a double hang.
just hang another banner, just put 222s up there. In part, I think he was at the game tonight. I thought
He
I saw a
was.
picture of Mike hugging Giannis after the game, and he said some really thoughtful, social media posts when people have passed him for records, and he's still very much a part of this franchise,
Mhm.
and he was there for the championship celebrations. Like, I don't know, it's cool, right? Like, he obviously didn't win very much as a player when he was here, but you can tell it means a lot for him to see the Bucks having success now. And obviously not that Ray Allen is obligated to come back to games all the time or something like that, but I think Michael Redd's sort of ongoing relationship with the franchise, like, that's got to matter in some respect.
Mhm.
And so who knows? I mean, hopefully Ray Allen kind of gets to a better, and not that he's in like a bad place with the franchise or something
Right.
like that, but hopefully we kind of continue to see that. And I don't know, we'll see. I mean, I was always a big dog guy between Ray and Glenn. Big Dog was my guy. Um, Obviously he's got a claim on a jersey retirement as well. I don't think Malcolm Brogdon is gonna
Nah.
make too much of a claim on his number 13. Luke Ridnour, number 13. Jordan Wara, probably not.
Nah.
But yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I do wonder too with Ray Allen in particular, like if you were just to say Ray Allen to a person, I think most people might associate him with a Celtic
Yeah.
before they associate him with a Buck at this point. So, I mean, hey, it's kind of an interesting way to come wrap that back around after a Boston Celtics Milwaukee Bucks game. And I do want to look ahead to the back-to-back weekend that the Bucks have, because this was the first of a 3-game stretch that I thought was going to tell us a lot about this team. So let's get into that next. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And honestly, it's no wonder why that is. It's truly the easiest and the most exciting way to play DFS, because it's just you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about battling against thousands of other players, which normally includes various pros and sharks. With Prize Picks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and then you can watch the winnings roll in. At this point, we've been on Locked On Bucks for a few months now as a host. So y'all should know by now, I like getting my money when I win my money. And that's one thing I love about Prize Picks, because I get my money very, very quickly. They have really quick withdrawals, plus easy gameplay, plus an enormous selection of players and stat types. All that just adds up to make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So head over to prizepicks.com and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Head over to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. This weekend, not only did we just have to see the Celtics, of course, again, second night of back-to-back, no Al Horford. We hear it. We didn't belabor the point when it was the Bucks on the other half of this last year. But this weekend, we have the Warriors coming in on Saturday, and then we have the Kings coming in on Sunday. So it's a West Coast back-to-back taking place here in Milwaukee. And while the Warriors might be going through their challenges and the Kings are out here with their names in all these trade streets, both of these teams present a really good challenge for this Bucks team because they have dynamic point guards that lead their offenses. So that point of attack defense is going to be put to test against Steph Curry on Saturday, followed by De'Aaron Fox on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, probably couldn't pick a better time to catch the Warriors at this point. Chris Paul just going out with a broken hand. He's been one of the few kind of like guys that seems to be in all the positive lineups for the Warriors, but it's just such an interesting kind of dynamic for them because they're kind of their core starting five. Last year they weren't on the floor very much, but when they were incredible. And this year it's just been like a total flip, and I think a lot of that has been laid at Andrew Wiggins' feet. He's been just really struggling to score with any effectiveness, and just doesn't look like the guy that was the second best player in the NBA Finals 2 years ago. So hopefully he continues to not look that way. And Steph's had some pretty bad shooting games of late too. So we'll see. I don't know. It feels like we've had like a number of games going back to to the Jrue Holiday era where Steph did not have big performances. I mean, I remember Wes Matthews face guarding him from the opening tip a couple times during the Bud era, and the Bucks having some big wins. Even without Jrue actually being the one to kind of guard him on every possession. So we'll see. Hopefully you just got to take advantage of that opportunity to play the Warriors right now. They are not big, so you hopefully can take advantage of the size differential, and you just hope that you don't have a supernova shooting night from Steph and Clay. And then Sacramento, I mean, offensively, they've been obviously super dynamic. You hope that they don't go full Indiana Pacers on the Bucks. De'Aaron Fox has been amazing, and it's just bizarre how like that trade, right? Like that trade, you hear if you didn't know who the Kings got, you would say like, oh man, the Kings traded away a young Tyrese Haliburton, like that must have been just a disaster. But De'Aaron Fox, has ascended since that move, and Sabonis has been terrific, having another huge year this year. 20 points a game, over I think leading the league in rebounding. So hopefully, I think we've seen the Bucks with their size can bother him down low a bit with Brooke and Giannis, and then obviously you hope that they don't make a ton of threes. I'm just having visions of Kevin Huerter just going absolutely bonkers in the second half last year in that game in Sacramento. Then you had the Trey Lyles, Giannis push, and Brooke getting on his face. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that carries over. I think Huerter got benched.
He hasn't been playing too well this season.
So good riddance to the Red Rocket. Kevon Huerter. He's just Kevin now again, I guess. But we'll see. So yeah, I mean, if you can bank 2 more wins on the weekend on a back-to-back and show that you don't do what we just saw when the Celtics come to town, but you get up and play inspired basketball on both ends, just most nights, God forbid, that's really the kind of the key thing now, right? I mean, you're not even halfway through the season, so you can't just circle the next 2 Celtics games and kind of sputter through the rest of the schedule. So yeah, great job, Bucks. Now do it again.
Absolutely. And we will see if they can do it again on Saturday when the Warriors come in. The Warriors will be coming in on the second night of a back-to-back themselves. They'll be in Chicago on Friday night before they come to Milwaukee on Saturday. The Kings will have a day off before they see us, but it should be a fun weekend. We're going to learn a lot more about this team as we continue adding on to the sample size of games, and we got some pretty good comp coming up. So that'll do it for us today. Again, let us know in the comments if you think that Jrue Holiday's number should be retired here in Milwaukee. I'm very curious to know what other Bucks fans think about that. Also, after we close out here, head on over to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to that first ever national sports 24/7 channel and enjoy all of the top sports stories coming from local experts who you can trust. So for Frank and myself, we'll catch you later.